Hi, I'm Christina Harrison, and I'm welcoming you to Art Accelerated's Writers Reading Project for 2021. I want to thank the Oregon Cultural Trust for the generous grant that makes this online program possible. Sherry Green is reading for us today. Sherry holds a master's degree in writing. She has published a memoir, Child Alone, and a number of articles in various papers and magazines. She enjoys the rain from the windows of a small house in Tillamook, Oregon, and often goes to a jetty to watch the roaring Pacific. Welcome, Sherry.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to read a couple of pieces. The first one is a poem that was written last year during the COVID lockdown. It's called I Want Morning Coffee with Mr. Wilson. My doors are always closed. I wish one would open each morning and I could step through to the garden, look through the shadows and up to trees towering, enshrining the man standing there just beyond the wire fence. He always wore khaki, both shirt and slacks, an all khaki man. I hardly knew he was old. Mostly I just saw khaki. I was 4, so he had to lean way down over the fence to offer gum. First he'd open the box like a tiny drawer, then offer it. White squares of gum lay neatly in rows, white with the khaki man. My whole world slid into place like that gum. Slowly, I'd pick one out and say, "Thank you," to Mr. Wilson. He talked to me like I was a grown up, one worthy to be talked to. In his eyes, I was already a human being. The things he said showed he cared what happened to me, even in my little world. "See those woods out there?" He pointed behind our houses. "Stay away from there. There's a well with a rotten cover. You fall in, no one will ever find you." Serious, real, actual life from the safety of khaki. It's been 58 years since those shadows left, strong and tall, not here. Now there are traps, wells everywhere floating in the wind, daring us to step near where no one will ever find us. I want to step through my door to a fence to a tower of khaki one more time. I would tell him of COVID, of wells so many sink through, strangling in ICU, of neat white rows of coats pulling them from the wells. And I'd ask him to stand by my fence a little longer, a tower of khaki holding up the world. I started a new memoir just before COVID started, about December of 2019. I wrote this first chapter of this memoir. It's going to be called Redemption. A fireplace flickers orange light inside my tiny house near Tillamook Bay. I sit warm and secure and may I start that again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. A fireplace flickers orange light inside my tiny house near Tillamook Bay. I sit in warmth and security while listening to a storm raging against the windows, torrents of rain pattering on the stovepipe above the roof. Lacey, a calico cat, stretches in front of the fire with contentment. But just then, Channel 2's 5 o'clock news reported a father and 2 tiny children in his arms being swept out to sea by a sneaker wave. The children were only 4 and 7. The youngest, a boy, had not been found. The search called off. His sister had died, the father in a hospital. Reality burns as salt in a wound. The salt of sea with its raging winds had blown hard tonight. When I first moved to this town, an elder, a lifetime resident, warned me of the 3 rules of living near the sea. He said, "Never sit on a log, never turn your back to the sea, and always have a buddy with you." I had spent most of my life coming here for vacations, weekend visits, and had never quite understood till tonight. How would anyone ever have guessed life and death We're always on the edge of such beauty as our North Oregon coast presented to us. I would learn of other dangers locals live with and would learn even more of the many beautiful aspects near the wilderness and the ocean. Most of all, I would come to know something of how big the world was compared to myself. I'm only a blimp on a never ending length of time. Nature brings home many realities. Tonight, the reality is how quickly a life can disappear, how sadness moves in, unrelenting, without apology, and forever. Yet the sea still boils with raging waves hitting rocks and reaching farther inland than seemingly ever before. But one, it had done it before, and it will do it again, maybe in a millennia, but it will. Nature is a powerful entity. The constant movement of the sea showers proof. Oregon beaches are different than others around the country. Here they are all public. We all own them and have access nearly everywhere one can imagine. The only barriers are the rugged landscape, cliffs and ravines, large rocks offshore, and trees growing in places unimaginable were barriers to the pioneers as well. The city of Tillamook sits in a small valley surrounded by rivers and rich with fine soil for grass. It was deemed perfect for raising milk cows, but the pioneers had trouble bringing in supplies. Horse-drawn wagons from Astoria struggled up and down ravines and hairpin turns through thick forests. It was hard going and an extreme problem if a wagon should meet another going in the opposite direction. Many supplies were brought in by ship, but the bar at Tillamook Bay was exceptionally dangerous, and sometimes the ship had to wait till better weather to pass across it. Pioneers would send butter out there in barrels for the market on these ships, and sometimes the butter would rot waiting to cross the bar. In early 1900s, with the advent of automobiles, drivers used the beaches for highways to go up and down the Oregon coast. So Governor West declared the beaches public right-of-ways. Also in the early 1900s, a resort was built on the spit land between Tillamook Bay and the Pacific. It was to be the Atlantic City of the West. It had large heated swimming pool with artificial waves, a post office, and many other buildings. Rich people bought up land and built houses. But then, without knowing what would happen, a jetty was built to try to tame the bar. What it did was change the currents, and this resort, the city of Bay Ocean, over a length of time, fell into an unrelenting sea. The ocean took what it would, and no one of any stature, strength, money, or power could change it, and no one could have guessed the future. But beyond all this, the grand thing that came out of the early 1900s was the fact that our beaches belong to all of us. People come from Portland and all around to see the grandest vistas of cliffs, to look down from the heights, seeing sandy beaches arch along towns with an edge of white movement glancing from the sea to touch them. Or one can look from below on such beauty upwards at the cliffs showing rock formations and greenery grown from crags. And above that, the clouds in an ever sliding dance along our region of rainy and cool temperatures. It seems the wind always blows at my house, usually in the afternoons when the tides change. I can't see the bay from here, but the winds know no barrier. I can travel to the beach and often do, see storms. Storm watching is one of the pastimes of Oregon. To see the raging movement of water and hear the howl of wind whipping against trees and structures is to see reality, to see how big the world is in both place and time, to understand your rights to breathe on this planet the same as any other, and then to come to know how little you really are. There is so much to be redeemed from this region. No wonder people from afar come to visit. And how so very sad it is that a young man with his babies in his arms should fall victim to it. There's no way to warn the many visitors that come that the beautiful ocean can be a raging beast. No way to warn that there are more realities waiting to be discovered beyond the ones they come to seek. I came through a storm to this coffee shop in Tillamook to write. It was cold and windy getting in through the door. That was real. And now it's warm inside and I sit among murmuring voices of peace. Is my peace real? Yes, it is. But there is more. Oh, so much more. 10 years ago, I awoke from a month-long coma to, to illness and inability to move. While asleep, I had seizures, a stroke, sepsis, kidney failure, and lung infection. I woke still on life support and stayed on the ventilator for a second month beyond. It would take another month further to gather strength to learn to walk again. To me, lying in the hospital hour after long hour was a kind of epiphany about living, about what was important and what was not. I thought I had learned a great deal in that time, but the last 10 years had brought so much more. Within 2 years of the coma, I'd finished a memoir of my life, Child Alone, which chronicled abuses, mental illness, discoveries, and healing. I thought that was the reason I lived beyond the coma, to write my story. But I've lived 10 years more and discovered healings that capped off everything, ultimately, a redemption. Something deep and powerful as the sea, from its depths, washed to the shore, leaving relics to be found by the weary and ever watchful.
Thank you.
Thank you.